Today, I have with me the opposition leader of Barbados, and she and I are going to discuss some of the events taking place in Barbados and what's going to shape the current election period and what's actually going to be the plan for Barbados and the needs in terms of the economic and other reforms post the election period. So, Mia, thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you and such an honor. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be here as well. I know we've been planning this for some time, but we finally made the schedules work.
Yes, thanks for that. I know this is a very busy time for you, so I really appreciate your time. So the first thing I want to ask, I mean, I've been seeing in the media and social media so much speculation about, what this means, the fact that, Parliament has been dissolved and the election date hasn't yet been called. Can you tell us what this means in terms of what happens now in the intervening period before the election is held? When does the election have to be held by, and when will we know what's happening? Because I think that there seems to be quite a bit of uncertainty, and I just would like for you to clear up some of that for us, please.
Well, the Constitution prescribes that the writ for elections for the new Parliament must be returned within 90 days of the dissolution of Parliament. And effectively, the dissolution took place on the 5th or 6th of March. It means that the Governor General must receive back the writ declaring who are the new members of Parliament no later than the 3rd of June, which is a Sunday, so effectively the 4th of June. That means that effectively the election has to be called by the end of May, first day of June. And to that extent, we anticipate that the latest the Prime Minister can call it is in fact in 2 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time. So for all intents and purposes, the only thing that has not been called is the date, but Barbados is in election mode.
Right. Yes, that much is clear. Um, so because I think, this has just been a lot of uncertainty and so many questions in the air, but I'm glad that you cleared that up. Thanks. But, this for me speaks to institutional quality and governance. The fact that this has happened and that no date has yet been called and there are questions and uncertainty. Does this suggest the same to you, that there is, I mean, not just this, but also other events such as the sewage problem that took place towards the end of last year on the South Coast, the fact that the Article 4 report has not been released for the second time in recent years? Does this also suggest to you, as it does to me, that there's been an erosion of institutional strength in Barbados and an erosion of the level of governance, which, Barbados has been known as a clear outlier in the English-speaking Caribbean as being the benchmark for institutional strength and governance. Does this signal to you that there's been some erosion in that regard?
Let's stay. This is uncharted territory for us. We've never gone down this road before. We've never had, in the context of 52 years of independence, an election being called so late and so deep. The government was elected on the 21st of February, 2013. We are now into May in respect to that. This is uncharted territory for the country, and the truth is that, as you have correctly said, Barbados has a reputation for stability and for presumption of order. And the one thing this does not do is to give people confidence that there is order. Let's deal first with the Article 4 report. The worst thing you can do is to withhold information from anybody, and especially in our part of the world where we have a tradition of the majority of our population being victims of censorship and victims of restrictions on liberty for the majority of our settlement in these parts of the world. So that to withhold the Article 4 report causes people to be suspicious and to even imagine worse than what it might actually be. So that's definitely not on. We believe in confronting our problems and fixing them. Secondly, in relation to the sewage project, that also says to the world, look, we have had a serious problem with maintaining our systems, our institutions, um, whether it is the sewage system, whether it is the courts now having to be closed because of the absence of maintenance, leading to serious environmental problems, and therefore the courts having to function in different buildings, or whether it is garbage trucks with wheels breaking off on the highway and a bus burning yesterday. I mean,
Oh,
Chinua Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart, seems to be
yes.
the most apt description of it now. The one good thing is that these are all man-made. When I look at the sun, when I look at the sky, when I look at the ocean, when I look at the people, everything that essentially helped build this country that relates to things that are not man-made are working. What is not working are the things that we've neglected for the last 5 years. So the institutional implosion is coming as a result of that. But the core essence of the values of the majority of the people and the willingness of the people to make things happen and work again is there. And I fully anticipate that even though we may have to transform some institutions, that we will be able to bring back that level of stability. Barbados has one asset and has always had one major asset. It is stability, political stability, social stability, economic stability. And that stability is what allows us to be able to command a higher value added in a lot of the things that we've done traditionally. So we're comfortable that there's a willingness on the part of the population to make this country work again. Work foremost for Bajans, work for everyone else who visits this country. And with that willingness, we understand that it's going to require discipline, that it's going to require creativity, it's going to require thinking out of the box and using technology to the maximum. Um, but we can make it happen.
Of course, there are solutions, and we have to find them and find the ones that work best and execute.
That's right.
So, and on that note, what are your thoughts on? I mean, I have my thoughts on what some of the reforms that I think would be effective and necessary. For example, a fiscal responsibility framework, which I've talked about, not just in the case of Barbados, and the case of all the countries that do not have fiscal response. Or as Governor Antoine of the ECCB said on the last webinar I had, fiscal resilience framework. So I promise never to use that term, fiscal responsibility framework. So, I mean, I think first and foremost, we need a fiscal resilience framework in Barbados, which will basically prevent this a recurrence of the situation we have today, where debt has gone way over the sustainability threshold, and there's been a fiscal imbalance, fiscal deficits.
Well, let's put it in context. I mean,
Mhm,
between 1955 and 2007,
mhm,
52 years, Barbados
yes,
ran a fiscal current account deficit on 5 occasions.
mhm,
Never 2 consecutive years, never more than $20 million. What was a aberration has now become standard for the country.
the
The truth
norm.
is that we have, since 2007, run a fiscal current account deficit every single year without exception. And it can't continue. Now, the government has nothing to show, regrettably, for this deficit that has been run cumulatively. So 52 years, 5 times across 6 governments in the last decade, every single year without exception, but one government. Now, when I
Right.
compare the actions of 6 governments against one
Mhm.
represents who we are as a people, and one doesn't. Scenario. The scenario that represents who we are as a people is the 1955 to 2007 scenario. That's who Barbadians are. That fiscal recklessness that you have seen in recent times is not who we are at the individual level, nor has it ever been in the past who we are at the collective level. And to that extent, the sense of responsibility and the intention to be able to bring our circumstances back into order, because as you know, we can't run a fixed exchange rate and have that kind of fiscal recklessness
Can't.
characterizing the work of the government. And we are very clear that our people want the stability. of a fixed exchange rate. They want the stability of being able to plan on the basis that it's a 2-to-1 that they're working with, and that allows them certainty as they go forward and plan. So we will have to do what we have to do, but it has to be done in consultation with the people. And it
Right.
has to be on the basis of a simple principle that the burden must be fairly shared among everybody. And that those who are on the front line of the adjustment of the burden, to respond to sharing the burden, must ultimately be on the front line of any bounty that comes back in. So, yes, in short, we do need some kind of fiscal resilience framework. We do have a draft plan ready because we are conscious that, unlike the United States of America, where people are accustomed to a long transition, in our system, the day after an election is work, straight off to work. And to that extent, the opposition has prepared itself over the course of the last year to start the conversation with Barbadians. We believe that our governance does not admit for a top-down approach only, but that it has to be consultative, because if you're going to ask people to lift heavy weight, you have to bring them along with you. And that's what
Yes.
we intend to do. And whether it is labor, whether it's capital, whether it's businesses, regardless of regardless of whoever it is, we know that we have to suck it in, that we have to tighten our belt, and that we have to make things work again. Because if we do it and we do it well, that we can get in and out of this and get on to the business, not just of stabilizing the economy, but of transformation. Because many countries have literally leapfrogged us over the
Yes.
course of this last decade. And,
Mhm.
and we know we can do better, and we know we want to do better, and can, in fact, raise our game significantly and reach for the stars. So at this stage of the game, we are in the context of a campaign, but once the campaign is over, and God willing, once the people of Barbados determine that they want to change, as we suspect they will, then we get on to the business of heavy lifting and consultation and giving our people choice. Because as Amartya Sen said, freedom is choice. And we have to make the choices that we believe best suit our circumstances, and how best we can bring ourselves back into a righteous position of being able to regain economic independence. Because with this level of debt, you literally have given up the independence to make decisions.
Agreed. And I mean, in that regard, and I'm happy to hear that you're in support of a fiscal resilience framework. But, I think Barbados, but other countries in the Caribbean badly need other reforms, such as, for example, public sector reform. I mean, if you look at, for example, in Jamaica, the kinds of public sector reform they have undergone, and even putting into effect an e-government framework that they're embarking on with the help of the Estonians. Tell me your thoughts on some of the, as you see it, some of the most critical reforms that Barbados needs to become competitive. So as we say, not just stable, we know we have a period of stabilization to go through, but in terms of taking Barbados to the next level, what are the kinds of reforms that you think are most critical?
Well, let me just say before I go on that one of the mistakes that people make is believing that governments only have the power to tax and spend. We've made it very
That's
clear that
true.
that is not our position. We feel strongly that governments have to use all of its powers for us to get out of this economic rut. We have the power to legislate. We have the power to empower, to facilitate, to regulate, and through the other powers that we have, we can literally drive economic activity and bring back growth to this economy. In addition to our powers to tax and spend, so we've got to get the fiscal situation correct straight off. We have to be able to deal with the fact that our reserves are down, and to a large extent, in our view, that's going to be a function of bringing back confidence to the management of this economy so investments can start to flow again. There are about 25 major capital investments that are there, that people have just been waiting for elections to pass, or that are they waiting for town planning permissions or some other form of regulatory framework that is still in place. So that one of the consequences of driving this electoral period, as long as we've driven it, is literally that you've caused a lot of businesses to put things on pause. Coming specifically to the question that you asked, we believe that we have to modernize our economic drivers and to transform this economy. We feel strongly that how we mobilize, there are about $8.8 billion in savings in this country that is not being mobilized to be able to bring about the kind of productive drivers that we need in order to see change and to see growth happening again. Whether it is in the establishment of new financial instruments through legislation and through the regulatory framework, whether it is literally seeking to give Barbadians access to capital through at the nano and micro level through something that we hope to do called trust loans, right back through to the changes that are necessary on the junior stock exchange, whether it is looking at crowdfunding as a new mechanism so that you can mobilize funding from the diaspora and the region and not just locally. Access to capital is going to be critical. We feel as well that we need to be able to bring about changes in terms of new economic planks for growth. We have traditionally had the special economic zone legislation that needs modernizing. We need to bring new areas into the special economic zone legislation. We see that Bridgetown, we feel, can become a smart city. And during the campaign, we'll talk more about that as a smart and creative city, building also on its World Heritage designation that we haven't used. We're going to talk about what we will do with Skytown and what we will do with Oystons and Six Roads and St. Lawrence Gap and other key areas. We have to talk about how we're going to stabilize the rural society in terms of bringing back a lot of the plantations that are lying there, but can add economic value to a lot of what Barbados has to offer as an international business domicile and as a heritage attraction. We feel that we have to put a framework for one of your favorite things, fintech and a regulatory sandbox. We're missing the boat on a lot of the action that's taking place there. And when you look at Barbados' educational profile, we need to be building on top of what we have, not taking away people's opportunities for tertiary education. So we're going to resume paying for our students because jobs will be created, and they'll be created here, there, or there. Where jobs are created depends on the educational profile that we have to offer. And we feel that there's a lot more opportunity for substantive international business for companies not just to want to have their domicile in Barbados in name only, but for the substantive business that the international business sector has been crying out for. We have companies here that have their global headquarters here, that operate their administrative support systems, their IT, their customer service, their finance systems. We need more of that substantive business, and we're going to go after it. We believe that cybersecurity is an area in which we need to develop some level of excellence, and that our international business brand must not only be based on low tax and double taxation agreements, bilateral investment treaties, quality of life issues, but also stability and certainty in terms of the quality of cybersecurity that we offer for persons functioning within Barbados, and that has to become part of our brand. We feel that we have to literally, literally reconstruct government in terms of how business is done. And a lot of this is going to require an electronic and digital platform, whether it's doing licenses, whether it is town planning applications, clearing through customs, obtaining passports, all of the things that you hear people complain about. I mean, the notion that we've fallen so far behind is something that has not given us any pleasure whatsoever. So that whole digital platform is critical. We need a new commercial court. People must have certainty in the resolution of disputes, and also to be able to attract arbitration here, as we tried to do before we last left government. We need to be able to deal with the oil and gas sector and to resume and to have certainty as to where that is going. So I could go on. We need to deal with the creative economy. I could go on a whole range of things that are entirely doable, and they're not in the sky. And if you're managing a cabinet effectively, and if you have people coming to work daily to do what they're supposed to do, the notion of stabilizing this economy and putting the planks to growth, and as I said, doing it in such a way where it's not just about what fiscal space you have, but let's take reverse mortgages. You passed the legislation for reverse mortgages. In Barbados, there's been a level of genteel poverty developing, especially among the middle classes. And if you immediately create the framework where you unlock access to capital to a number of those people, all of a sudden money's going to start spending 50,000 here, 100,000 there, roofs need fixing, tiles have come up, steps need fixing, all kinds of things. So that the generation of economic activity is critical, but we don't need spending only to generate that economic activity. And that's just but one small example. You know that I have a thing for the islands, and we will build new islands once the environmental scoping study says that it can be done. Mercifully, we think that that determination by the environmental scoping study is something that can be done quickly. The coastal engineers tell me that the one thing Barbados has is studies upon studies upon studies. So, so I'm optimistic about the future. I'm confident about the future. And as I said, what is even more heartwarming for me is that Barbadians from all stations want to make this future a reality.
And they want change.
They want change.
Yes. So, I mean, you outlined a lot of initiatives and reforms that can help to transform Barbados. My one concern is that, I mean, and this is not just true of Barbados, but many countries, this whole idea of an implementation deficit, where we seem to have a problem with execution in the public sector. I mean, the kinds of initiatives you've just outlined require immense executing power. How are you going to close this implementation deficit?
The first thing it requires is not only implementation, but leadership. Look, you have to lead.
Of course,
you have
course.
to encourage people, and you have to walk the walk and not just ask people to walk it. The restructuring of the public service is a critical aspect in order to do that. And I mean the rules, not the people. Barbados and India were the first two countries to benefit from, to the extent that you can benefit from anything in colonization, from the institutional development that happened during colonization. We have a police force that was established in 1838. We have a psychiatric hospital that was established in the 1870s and a post office that was established in the 1850s. Barbados and India have held on to these rules for dear life, like if it defines every aspect of who and what we are. You know the situation with India and the rules and the same thing, the delays and everything.
Inefficiencies.
We have literally to look at each system across government and ask a number of questions. What is the public interest that we're really trying to promote? What is the public mischief that we're really trying to avert? Does technology afford us an efficient way and an effective way to do the same thing in a way that it did not 20, 30, 40 years ago? And are there social justice and equity issues that we have to take into account as we restructure the systems and rules to be able to do this? And we literally have to go across every area of government and ask those questions such that we do not continue to impose a 19th and a 20th century government in a 21st century Barbados. Okay? So that is going to help with a lot of the implementation issues that are bedeviling us. Because what is being required very often is not just lethargy on the part of people who are working in government, but it is also that the systems don't make sense. Right. And if the systems don't make sense or they take too long, the length of time of being able to respond or to be able to execute is then out of whack with what you would expect in a country that is dealing with real time and people that deal with these every minute and every second of the day. So it's a combination of leadership, it's a combination of renewed and restructured systems, it's a combination of inspiring your public servants and the other people in the country to be able to work towards a mission. We will introduce the concept of special purpose missions so that we're going to take a task and we say, okay, let's work ourselves out of a job here. Let's see how we're going to achieve this. Let's give ourselves clear deadlines and let's get it done. Because unless we get it done, talking about it is not enough. And fortunately for me, I've had the opportunity of serving in every area of government. I spent 7 years as Minister of Education, 5 as Attorney General in governance, and 2 in Minister of Economic Affairs. So I've served in governance, in economic sectors, and social sectors. And I think I have a clear idea as to where some of the pitfalls can be in terms of implementation and how to go about it. It's not going to be an easy road, as Buju
No.
Banton always says, but the truth is that
Yeah.
I think we can do it. It's going to require discipline. We're going to have to suck in and suck up and
Yeah,
get it
boy.
done. And know that the job is not done by speaking about it, but the job is done only by doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. When my first female president was inaugurated recently, she said, two things I want this population to do: show up for work on time and actually do some work. So we have this challenge in many places. I mean, Trinidad is no exception, Barbados is no exception. But what you're saying is true. You just have to, of course,
A lot
lead
of
by example, but just get it done.
Yeah, and apart from the leadership, a lot of it is systems. We've just
Yes.
simply not reformed the systems. I mean, if I carry you through what is required to deal with a police accident report for a car accident, but what are the implications of not doing it in quick order? If you've got to wait 8, 9 months for a police accident report, the insurance company has to put aside that money into a fund. It's not to productive use. It then becomes a drag on the insurance company, which then becomes a drag on the local economy. So little things end up having
Yes.
huge consequences, and that's
Yes.
what we're not getting. The
Right.
other thing, of course, is this, Marla. We are
Mhm.
52 years old as a country,
Yeah.
effectively this year. Um, Now, if you can't start having mature conversations at 52, I don't know when you're going to start having them. We need to have a conversation as a country and as a region and talk our people through it. And the irony is that the technology affords us the opportunity to have these conversations more than it has ever done in our history.
I agree with you.
We have
I
to have
agree.
the conversations. And we
I
have
agree.
to
But
get people on board pulling in the same direction.
yeah, I mean, even the whole idea of a CARICOM single market
Mm-hmm.
and, all of these things, that the structures that we envisioned and contemplated back then, not relevant now, but with technology, it becomes that much easier to achieve in a way that we hadn't thought of, 50 plus years ago. So I agree with you that that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the last thing that I want to touch on with you that, is of course a very sensitive subject in Barbados and everywhere else in Trinidad as well, is the whole issue of credit rating, sovereign credit ratings. Um, you know, I one of the things that Barbados again had scored relatively well on in if you look at the breakdown of the credit ratings and even the scores and the competitiveness indices and so on, is the whole institutional factor, and governance and so on. And now that we've seen some of that some weakness there, alongside fiscal weakness, alongside external weakness, meaning weakness with respect to the reserves, and import cover.
Yeah.
Um, I quite suspect that we might see some action on the credit ratings. Um, I hope
Tell me
that,
what you need from action, because action can be good or bad.
well, I mean, given what has happened in the political arena with the parliament being dissolved, election date not being yet
In other words,
called, and
not
so
good.
on,
Not good.
no, I
And
think,
is that we will have to put the country on alert. I don't know when the credit rating agencies will bring out a credit rating. It may cut across the election date. The reality is, as you have reminded me previously, the credit rating is a statement on the balance sheet. It is not a statement as to where we are today per se alone. So,
correct.
you
It
know,
is it is a reflection of their assessment of your willingness and ability to honor your debt. So
yep.
that encompasses, that willingness part in particular encompasses some institutional factors and governance factors. And so it would be very unfortunate for them to have this rating come out in a negative, or with a negative outlook or downgrade,
Around the
just
election.
as there is a new government.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or even just before the election. That's the truth. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
an electoral period has different implications. But let me say that one of our strategic objectives is obviously to return to investment grade. I mean, this
Good.
notion we have belabored under as a country that an investment grade is garbage and it doesn't mean anything is the biggest embarrassment to serious thinking people in this country for the last couple of years, 4 or 5 years. And we've lost Sagicor. Sagicor was Barbados Mutual. Barbados Mutual was established in the 19th century in Barbados. Barbados Mutual Sagicor no longer has its domicile in Barbados. It's in Bermuda. I mean, and these are the blows that we've taken to our pride and to our systems. And it's unimaginable. And
Yeah.
simply because its credit rating as a company is constrained by the sovereign credit rating. And when a
Yes.
government doesn't take its sovereign credit rating well, this is what happens. Okay, so I mean, we have set out very clearly. I have a strong economic team with me that I'm very proud of, and I feel that will help do what we have to do. That we have to return the country to investment grade. That means having the fiscal rectitude that we spoke
Yes.
about. That means
Yes.
building back the reserves. That means doing the institutional changes and using the other drivers of government for growth. Um, we're going to do it. I mean, I, I look forward to talking to you periodically. In a year's
Sure.
time, look back on this moment. In 5 years' time, look back on this moment. Because one of
Yes.
the things is that we must never forget where we've come from to ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.
I agree. I look forward to having this conversation with you periodically to say, remember when, and look at how far we've come. Because I know that and I agree with you. I mean, I believe that there are solutions, and I
Mhm.
believe that it can be done. It
Mhm.
requires leadership and it requires commitment.
And some strong
And
decisions.
yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
also feel that CSME is an area of tremendous opportunity.
Oh,
Um,
I couldn't agree with you more.
regrettably, um, we have not seen the level of leadership exhibited in the last decade.
Mhm.
And the Golding Report that
Yeah,
has been made in Jamaica reflects that fact. And the talk about what Jamaica may or may not do is really anchored in the fact that they have expressed their disappointment in the absence of progress with respect to
exactly.
the project. In my own view, we have always to remember that 52% of our exports in Barbados have, in fact, been to CARICOM. That Barbados is integrated into the Eastern and Southern Caribbean in an inextricable way. I mean, Barbados and Trinidad have a relationship that is special, and Barbados and Guyana. We need to remember, for example, that I think it's the 1978 Agreement for Investment may need to be looked at again, but Trinidad is the largest or second largest source of investment into Barbados. Okay. Um, and we need to treat to the single market and single economy in a more strategic way. We've talked about the question of trading in hard currency. We've
Hmm.
talked about how best we can find mechanisms to finance the net difference
Exactly.
in the
The
trade,
trade deficit, yeah. Hmm.
in the trade deficits. I spoke about it in Jamaica last year when I went up there late last year in a speech that I gave up there. We've spoken about the need to create a single domestic space in transport, the need to create a single domestic space in telecommunications and in communications. And there are a lot of opportunities, not only within CARICOM, but across the entire Caribbean, even with
Agreed.
respect to labor and the fact that you have a situation in the Northern Caribbean where they're trying to rebuild after the hurricanes and where there may be a shortage of skills, but yet that information is not flowing freely throughout the region, so that where there may be some softness in terms of employment in one country, persons could be able to move, to be able to pick up the opportunities, to be able to help countries rebuild in a significant way. We haven't, in my view, apart from the single market and single economy as well, we haven't given sufficient consideration as to how we develop the maritime area of the Caribbean. Caribbean Sea is special, and the
Of course.
Caribbean Sea is a bounty for Caribbean people. But we continue to have a focus that is purely on the terrestrial environment, rather than recognizing that as islands, our exclusive economic zone and Barbados is 400 times the size of our
Of
land
the land.
space. And in fact, um, that if we were to concentrate on that as part of our economic development, that we would have far more drivers from which we could benefit than we're currently doing.
The
So,
blue economy, right?
we've committed to maritime affairs and the blue economy.
Right.
Um, so there's so many things, but a lot of them require an integrated approach. I've also made the point that the level of regulation that we're trying to do in every instance at the national level at great expense fiscally can perhaps be enhanced if we take a regional approach. I use what we did when we established the Caribbean Court of Justice as a model. We created one institution that was able to attract strong judges, that is insulated from the executive, but more importantly, that has national jurisdiction and regional jurisdiction, so that the same entity sits one day to day as a final court of appeal for Barbados or for Guyana or for Belize, and then it sits tomorrow as a treaty interpretation court for the whole of CARICOM. So those countries that are involved in the single market and single economy. So I really do believe that what we do in terms of finishing the built-in agenda for CARICOM, people are not going to move if you don't settle the whole issue of contingency rates. We need to have mutual recognition for the registration of companies so that if I want to do business in each country, I don't have to go to corporate affairs in
Oh
each
God.
country, set up a company or register as an external company in each country. I mean, there's a whole range of things that we're just not getting. And that if we simply do, we'll start to open up the opportunities. And I use the example of the Sea Bridge in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh boy.
Before you know better than me that there was a class of person that just simply did not travel. But once you had that ferry moving between Trinidad and Tobago, you open up opportunities for school children. You open up opportunities for churches and congregations, sporting teams, people who want to go over to Trinidad to get hardware and all kinds of lumber and all kinds of things. So that you can't have a single domestic space that is intended to be able to enhance your economic opportunities and don't fundamentally deal with transport.
No, exactly. Exactly. No, I agree with you. And but I do believe that two things with respect to, integration in inverted commas. I think so much of the integration that we have seen has been done by the private sector. We have so many companies that operate across the region. And also I agree with you on the fact that technology is the platform via which we will integrate
Yep.
and bring
And
us together.
our children are leading us in that respect.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that if we follow in some instances, look, we can't ignore values. Values is who we are. But if we allow technology and science to drive a lot of the discussion, we can move and see a lot more economic activity than we're currently seeing in the region. And we can see the region start to become global leaders. This is the International Year of the Coral Reef. How do we not have islands being global leaders with respect to the preservation of coral reefs or the rebuilding of coral reefs? How do we not? What's on the front line of climate change?
Exactly.
Where's our voice? What are we doing about it?
Yeah, it's like Three Canals says in their song, we have to find our voice and find our power
That's right.
and take
And,
it back.
and when you find your voice and find your power, it's effectively learning to speak truth to power. And in a sense, that's been perhaps the experience that we could have done better in Barbados because we've allowed ourselves to be cowed by a government that just did not turn up for work for the last 5 years.
Well, let's hope that
I
in the
want
next
to involve you into the domestic political issues, so at that point I start to veer again.
but I mean I hope that in the upcoming general election people do find their voice
Yeah,
and do find their power and do take the
so do
action
we.
that they need to take to
Yeah,
bring about the change and the transformation that Barbados needs. I really hope that it happens. I mean, grasp this and Bajans truly grasp this opportunity. And in that regard, I wish you all the very best.
thank you. And I'll share with you what I say to people all the time, and I mean this sincerely. Barbados has been good to us. Barbados has given us a quality of life that's second to none, in my view, anywhere in the world. I wouldn't trade this for anything. It's
Oh,
time for us now to be good to Barbados. And what we have benefited from over the course of certainly my lifetime, I would like to think that our children, my nieces, will be able to benefit from in the next 50 years. But we can't let them have that in the next 50 years if we're not prepared to do the heavy lifting and do the heavy work in the next few years to secure the next 50.
indeed. And you can do it. It can be
Yes,
done.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us, Mia. I really, really appreciate it. And again,
Thank
I
you.
wish you the best of luck. Best of luck.
Thank you. And I thank you for one other thing, for being able to create a platform for communication across the region, because this is really what the CSME is about when I talk about creating a single domestic space and information and communication. So thank you.
Well, it's the technology that allowed us to do this, just as we said. Thank you again, and look forward to chatting with you again soon. Take
Certainly.
care.
All the very best. Take care.
Thank you.